Deep in the forests of rural Quebec are a very weird pair of lakes. One of them looks pretty unassuming, but its neighbor can almost glow with a Mediterranean turquoise. So they sit in pretty stark contrast, even though they're only separated by this thin strip of land. In fact, they make such a strange sight from the air that pilots use them as a waymarker. And what makes the more colorful of the two even stranger, that color seems like it can switch on and off. Depending on the weather and the season, it can sometimes look like any other lake. So, what is it about this lake that gives it that striking color? And why only this lake? A big clue appears as soon as you break the surface. The bottom of the lake is almost uniformly covered by this whitish-gray substrate. That substrate is marl, a chalky clay-like blend of primarily calcium carbonate with whatever local conditions add to the mix. And in these quantities, it has a few dramatic effects on lakes. For one, it makes the water intensely alkaline. By covering everything, it also makes the lake less productive, which in turn makes the water clearer. And it absolutely suffuses that water with calcium carbonate. It's those two effects, clear water filled with calcium carbonate, that start to explain the wild color, and why it only happens at certain times. How? Because of retrograde solubility, of course. So calcium carbonate has a bit of a backwards relationship with temperature. When the water's cold, below around 12 degrees Celsius, the calcium carbonate stays dissolved in the water. But as the temperature rises, unlike most substances, calcium carbonate actually becomes less soluble and starts to precipitate. Suddenly, the lake is full of tiny particles suspended in the water. And all those tiny particles reflect and refract incoming sunlight. This has the effect of reinforcing blue wavelengths. Blue are the shortest wavelengths in the visible spectrum, and that makes them more likely to be reflected by particles, the same reason the sky is blue. Add to that the fact that water already preferentially absorbs longer wavelengths, and the clear water of the lake allowing more light to penetrate deeper, and you get this. But only when it's warm enough. In fact, something as simple as cloud cover can affect the intensity as well. If the clouds are already softening and scattering the light, you'll get less of it directly into the water to reflect. Okay, so that's one of our questions answered. Why does this lake look Mediterranean? But that leaves, where did this marl come from, and why of our two lakes does only one seem to be affected? The most likely source of marl in this region is, in fact, glaciers. As they make their way south across North America in the last ice age, they might encounter deposits of limestone along the way. Being a relatively soft rock, the limestone eventually gets ground down by the action of the glacier, from boulders to rocks to pebbles to powder. It becomes part of the glacial till pushed ahead of the ice until it gets deposited in a convenient depression like a lake bed, and it's possible that the lake bed itself could have been carved out by that same glacial action. That would make this glacial marl. It's also possible it could be lacustrine marl from existing limestone deposits on the lake bed. But either way, that is only half an answer. When we look under the surface of the lake, we see, for example, these trees covered with a thick crust of marl, and we can be pretty sure they fell in the lake after the last ice age. So glaciers didn't deposit any of this marl on them. There must be an ongoing process here. Actually, more than one. As we've learned, temperature lets marl precipitate in and out of the water, and when it precipitates out, it can settle and build up. But we have the lake's plants to thank, too. The act of photosynthesis actually produces more marl. As the plants take carbon dioxide out of the water, they disrupt the carbonate equilibrium. This also precipitates calcium carbonate out of the water solution, further building it up, even on the plants themselves. And it's a feedback loop. Every surface being covered in marl restricts the productivity of the lake. But for the plant species that can deal with the extreme environment, that makes the water clearer, letting in more sunlight, meaning more photosynthesis, meaning more marl, and so on and so on. That helps us answer why you can have two lakes right next to each other with only one of them having this color phenomenon. It could start with something as simple as the glacial till or initial marl deposit being in one basin but not the other. Direction of water flow also helps, in this case flowing into the marl lake so that the other one doesn't get any marl outflow. But as we've seen, once the process starts, it's self-reinforcing. So a lake with this tendency will become more extreme over time. And a lake that starts with more productivity, less marl, or both, won't ever have that snowball effect. And that's how you end up with our bizarre pair of lakes. And next time, we'll find out what that means for both the animals and plants that brave this extreme environment, and for us. If you're enjoying these videos, consider throwing me a few bucks a month on Patreon. It is the best possible thing you can do to ensure that they will keep coming.